Cards and Comics, and today I've got a little different video for you, and it's a 76 card vintage SGC to PSA crossover, and this was done over the course of basically 2 years. And even though the data is a little old, I think it's still pretty relevant because of two things. One is the ongoing, I think it's a myth that SGC used to be harder graders than PSA. And it's also relevant if you think PSA is a harder grader. Also, I've included the values from the year that I did the crossover and current value. And it's 76 cards, and there was actually more cards. It's closer to about 100 cards. But I took out all the modern cards and kind of the PC modern cards I had in here because nobody wants to see my Andrew McCutcheon and Garrett Cole PSA grading orders as a Pirate fan. So this was an experiment. This is me trying to determine if I could get value out of crossing SGC cards over. And the whole thought point was that it was less risky because SGC's already validated the cards are A, real, and B, they have a general grade around whatever they gave it. It's going to be within 1 or 2 points, right? And as you'll see in the video, I was able to make money in general, but the grading was definitely not consistent in terms of one way or the other. And I'll show you that absolutely the grading went in one direction. So starting in March of 2016, this was my PSA subscription order. So that's, it was 15 cards, but again, the modern stuff is out of here. So you've got roughly 10, 11 cards here. And you see, I sent in a range of cards from the 50s to the 70s. And in general, and you can see the difference here. In general, I had one card grade higher, which was the 64 Brooks Robinson. One card grade 3 points lower, which was the 54 Warren Spahn Red Heart, which was just a massive difference. And when I looked at the card, it had a crease, and SGC missed it. Not a good look there, SGC, on that card. And then mostly everything else was within one grade or a straight crossover now. And so in general, my grades went down by 6 total points. I did get one massive upgrade on the 64 Brooks Robinson, and I got some crossovers that were straight up. The 60 Killebrew and the Gary Carter rookie card were two pretty nice ones, and a 66 Willie Sturgill. And then in 2016 dollars, it was about a $240 gain in value. Now, if you go over to today's value, it's almost $1,000 compared to what it would have been in 2016. And the big one here is obviously the Brooks Robinson, which I'll shrink it down a little bit so you can see all the data here. But in general, when you look at it, the Brooks Robinson obviously was a pretty huge card then in terms of value, and it is even now. It went from a it went from a $300 card to a $600 card, so really doubled in value. And or 376, sorry, almost doubled in value. But there's some crazy prices here. You got that 66 Sturgill that went from $70 to $250, while the SGC card doubled, which is great, but it's really being outpaced quite dramatically by the PSA card. And in general, there's some really weird stuff, such as a PSA 4 outselling an SGC 7 in today's value on the Red Heart. And in general, you just see that the pricing is quadrupled in general for most cards. But you know, the PSA to SGC values have widened pretty dramatically. You know, even on the 72 Thurman Munson, same grade, you know, the PSA card's $80 more expensive. Gary Carter rookie card, $68. So again, you know, 30, 40, 50% more in value between the same grade PSA card. Harmon Killebrew, 1960. And in all cases, these are base cards. So these are not you know, all-star cards or anything unless they're identified. For example, the same usual is the all-star card. So in general, you see in that the price of cards are just gone nuts, but the value difference between PSA and SGC have widened pretty dramatically. So first order in the books, I feel pretty good about it. Made some money. Order number 2, it's even a little bit better. I mean, I'm actually, you know, I actually gain even more value. So, and again, you know, I had in general one pretty big, you know, actually 2 kind of big negatives. I had, you know, not a big card, but I lost 2 points in grading on the 34 Hallahan. But my 70 Gaylord Perry went from a 9 to a 6. So, you know, that's a pretty big drop right there. But everything else was within one, you know, 1 point of grading. And I got 1 bump, and that was a 73 Clemente. And that's a big card now. But, you know, the other big cards in this order was the 69 Ryan, going straight across from an 8 SGC to an 8 PSA, and the Seaver. And you can see in $2016, you know, this was a $550 bump, and so, you know, I was $800 up at this point. 2 orders in, I'm feeling pretty good. In today's value, it would have been a $2,200 gain in value, because over here you see that PSA 9 Clemente is now a $1,600 card, which is a $1,200 increase, while the PSA or SGC 8 Clemente, you know, went up in value, but compared to that 9, and then even, you know, light grade to light grade, you can see the value difference between the 69 Nolan Ryan, which is now $500, and roughly, and the Seaver is $300, whereas, you know, that Seaver was a $40 difference in 2016. Now it's a $300 difference. So, you know, you might find a few instances where some vintage cards are somewhat close, and you'll see that later on. There are some cards that I find out, like the 61 Banks, you know, where, you know, maybe that is an example where they're close. But in general, for cards that are of good, you know, top tier Hall of Famers or cards that are very popular, this difference is really widening in the prices. But, and again, this was 2 awesome subs in a row. The 73 Clemente is still in my collection. It is my 9 I showed off on my Clemente, and I still have the Seaver, I believe, and I'm not sure about the Ryan. That is one card I may have actually moved, and I'm very sad if I did. The reason why I don't know is, like, I've bought and sold so many cards, and I haven't done a 60s video yet, an updated 60s video, and I'm going to do that. I'm going to do it in a very different way when I do it, but I am going to do a 60s video to show off all my 60s Hall of Famers, and you know, go through it and see what cards I still have from all the buying and selling I did the last couple years. So in general, everything is going well. And then I crossed over one card here. It was a 56 Ted Williams. It went from an SG7 to a PSA 7. So I haven't lost any grades here, and about a $230 difference in value. So this is one where, I mean, you can see they're pretty close. I mean, that's within, what, 20%, 25%. So that's pretty close. So again, not every card is 80, 60%, 80% more expensive, but it's definitely closer to that than it is 20 to 25% mostly. So I've lost, on general about 6 points. I didn't lose any in this one, but it was only card. And then, the next order happened in September. And here, everything was really close. In fact, I had 4 bumps in this order. So I went from, a 7 to an 8.5 on the 66 Brooks. I went from a 2.5 to 3 on a T206 Piedmont Bender No Trees. 3 to 4 for trees and back Piedmont. And then, I went from a 7.5 to an 8 on my Jim Rice mini rookie card. And so, I'm feeling pretty good. I got this mini Jim Rice out of a pack too. It's kind of fun. I've opened some 75 mini packs back in the day, and that was one of them that I had sent into SGC, and then I sent it to PSA. So it was definitely a funny card. It eventually ended up in a PSA 8 holder, but and here, I did lose a point on my 73 Aaron, which was a bummer. But in general, again, I went up $400 in value, and today that'd be $900. So, again, 4 consecutive orders in a row. And this was the first one I really didn't lose any grade value. Half a point, which isn't nothing. I got an 8.5, which is a really rare grade for PSA to give out. And, just a lot of good value across the board. The standout card would be the Chief Bender going to a 4, which is a really tough grade. And the 69 Gibson is a very tough card. Crossing that over. And even the 8.5 Brooks Robinson, even though that 66 Brooks Robinson isn't a huge card, just getting 8.5 is really cool. And so 4 orders in a row, I'm feeling really good. So you're to anyone playing along at home, like, what's the deal? This is like an awesome thing to do, right? Well, you'll see as I go along is that, I got a little more bold in my strategy. This is not where I got bold. This is where I had some just cards I had laying around, and so I gone through my first top tier SGC cards that I had, and then here's kind of a mid-tier Hall of Famers from the 60s order. And again, I actually gained a point of value. So I'm 2 orders in a row where no real negative things were happening. Value-wise, on 6 cards, $150, that's pretty good value. And then today's $500, with the winner clearly being the 65 Yastrzemski going from a 7 to an 8. And the other one being the Steve Carlton coming back an 8.5. And so, 2 8.5s and 2 straight orders. I mean, I'm feeling really good about it. I've made roughly, $1,200-$1,300 by this point in total value. And so, it's definitely, I'm getting a little more bold, and this is where I get more bold. So, this was a very similar time of an order I sent in, and this is where things go off the rails, and this is where things start to really become very negative. And it was the reason why it really shocked me was not just, I was losing value 1 or 2 grades at a time. Cards were coming back trimmed, altered, miscut. This 59 Aaron came back miscut. It wasn't in grade. The 62 Aaron just was damaged. And this is where, if you're seeing me comment a lot on SGC cards where I say the holder damages the card, this 62 Aaron was damaged by the insert of SGC. And when I pulled it out of the holder for SGC, I did notice that the right edge was rough. I didn't really look at it until it came back in the PSA holder. Then I really realized that edge had crimped. That rough edge of that SGC insert had crimped the card and had driven some of the cardboard to kind of roll. And well, now the card's creased basically, and it came back a 4. And going from a 7.5 to a 4 and then having a miscut on the 2 biggest cards in the order besides the manual was just, really devastating. And if you look at it, I had 2 other cards that were awesome, the Mexican Webster and the 57 Spawn. Those are really cool cards, and but it was just ruined. And you can see even today's value, that was almost an $850 loss in value on those two cards alone if they would just went straight across. So you know it was a rough, really rough submission. And then it gets worse, and so this is not. It gets worse, and so this isn't the first. This isn't the end of it, and so I'm really, this is kind of my first really negative submission. But I soldier on, and and here we go again in December. So this is the last submission in December. I did gain some value here, but this is all over the place, and this is when I'm like, this is getting kind of crazy. Highlights here, obviously if you look at this sub is this Lefty Grove came back, altered, trimmed, and it just I looked at it and it is short, and it wouldn't grade, and it was a $320 card, and now it's an $1,100 card. And going to zero is really tough because you can't. This card won't grade. I guarantee it won't grade. It's short, and even gaining some value on like the Chief Bender card, getting the 68 Aaron to go straight across was a really. I mean that's literally a $400 gain in value, and it's all offset by the Gowdy and Grove going to zero. So you look through here and you see I gained a lot of value. I had a 61 Spawn go from an 8 to a 9, which was a $400 gain in value. So again, in general, if that Grove had just graded, I mean a 2 or a 3, this would have been a huge win, but it ended up being pretty much a wash, and in today's value it's still negative, even with the Aaron, the Seaver, the Bender, the Warren Spawn. I mean, multiple cards grading really well. And then there was another card going to zero right here, which is the Ernie Banks. And I tried this Ernie Banks again, in multiple orders, and it always comes back miscut. And I looked at it. I don't think it's miscut. I still have it. I have it still sitting downstairs. I have it in a 60 Banks that you'll see later. That I keep trying to get graded by PSA and they won't do it. There is obviously something wrong with the card. So 2 cards going to zero, altered, trimmed, what have you, miscut, and along with some good grades and a few bumps, and you get kind of a wash order. So 2 orders in a row where some major problems, major cards that I really wish would have just graded, came back, altered. So not feeling good going into 2017, and you can see I don't really go hard in 2017 with my first order. Kind of testing the waters again. I'm burned, on 2 orders in a row. And here I lose 1.5 points on a 63 floor checklist. Even though PSA pricing is really gained traction here, where it was a $100 loss, now it's only $45 loss. Still a loss. The 75 Aaron, obviously, George Brett, is still worth more money as a SGC 8 than a PSA 7.5. And that's because the 7.5 doesn't really sell much, so it's hard to get a comp on some value there. And then the 58 Bart Starr actually is a good crossover, and it sells a lot more as a PSA 8. So, even though in 2017 I lost money on the order, today, it'd be kind of a wash to $100 in profit. So, not terrible, but that 63 floor checklist is a big card. And if it would have graded an 8, for example, that's a huge card. And did get lucky on that one. Then moving down to the big order. So this was again my renewal of my PSA membership. So this was modern plus the cards here. Now, I didn't try to go big again because I had really got burnt. And I pinned together the Diamond Star set, so again, that's why you see a lot of Diamond Stars. And just kind of some mediocre cards. And there's that 69 Banks again. So this is submission number 2 for it, and it did not grade again. And then you'll just see here that a lot of straight crossovers are slightly loss in grades, including the Banks, which wouldn't grade at all. And really, it was just a wash. I mean, I lost money on this order. Today, I would have made some money on it. I mean, but it's just, I mean, obviously just because SGC to PSA pricing has gotten so dramatic, like that 73 Aaron, $150 versus $310, same grade, causes the value to spike. And if you look at the pricing, back in 2017, those two cards were virtually the same price in VCP. Today, it's $160 difference. So I just want to keep pointing out that I'm not the only one saying it, but I mean, if you just look at the data for top tier Hall of Famers, PSA is kind of running laps around SGC right now. And you see it over and over, even on some smaller cards, you'll see the pricing, always favor PSA for the most part, but on these big time Hall of Famers, the pricing is just lapping, I mean, here's an example of where the SGC, which is a higher grade, is still being outsold by the PSA in a lower grade by $50, 8 versus 8.5. So this order again was, I didn't have anything big in this order because I've been getting burnt on some big cards. So again, the Aaron was nice. Now here is, another order where things kind of, don't go the way I expected. This 51 Bowman's Duke Snyder was a beautiful card, and I bought it at the National, and I crossed it over to PSA. Lost 1.5 points of value. It's a negative. It was a negative $200. Now it's only $100, but still a negative, and the order was a negative in 2017. Today, the big card would be the 54 Snyder going 8/8. $165 in value, but again, and then my Bender crossing over. So if you want to just have one general trend was when I crossed over T cards, SGC does grade those harder. I mean, the ones I've crossed over in general, PSA grades them a little easier. So I've got multiple Chief Bender T cards that got bumps, and so it might be fair to say that, but on the 50s and 60s cards, PSA in general grades them harder, and it's consistent. It's not just card. It's, I mean, look at this. This order is a great example. I mean, card after card, 72 bench, negative 0.5. 72 or hockey, negative 0.5. 59 Gifford, negative 0.5. 68 Joe Morgan, negative 0.5. And then you've got the Banks here. So, it just shows you that, PSA just grades a little tougher on those 50s and 60s cards. Here you have two more, 50s and 60s cards where, you're losing 2 points in grading value on a 59 and Banks and a 61 Snyder. And then lastly, this was my last order, my last kind of experiment in 2017. I didn't continue in 2018 because in general, all of 2017 was a loss. I don't think I made any money on any order in 17. It's every order is a loss in 2017. So, 4 consecutive tries at it, and I gave up. And this last order is still a loss, even with all the value in 2021. I gained a 0.5 on the Gordie Howe, which was a $260 value today. It was a 192 in 2017. I mean, this card was a big bump, and offset again by 60 Banks that went from an 8 to 0. I have tried this card again in some other orders with friends, subbing it through other people, and it keeps coming back, trimmed. And so this Banks has been hit multiple times for being trimmed. So it goes from a $400 card to nothing today. And then everything else was within a point, but again, always on the negative side. The 62 usual, 64, Calente batting leaders. So yeah, I mean, just so 2016, was a lot of value. 2017 was a big goose egg. So if you go to the totals between SGC and PSA, I lost 59 points in total grades, averaging a negative 0.78 grade per card of the 76 cards, vintage cards I submitted. Value change, in 2016 I made $1,000. In 2017 I lost $300. So in general I made money, but I could see the writing on the wall. You saw it towards the end of 16. Things had gotten kind of off the rails with some big Aaron cards. The Gaudi Grove. I mean, those are big cards that really hurt me. And I just couldn't, and then all of 17 was a loss. So I just couldn't in 18 keep going. It just didn't make no sense to keep going. I got lucky on a few cards in 16, and it was kind of like I felt like it was playing the lottery a little bit. You get lucky on a few cards and unlucky, and if the card you got lucky on was a diamond star or something that was mediocre in value, Gaylord Perry, versus your Aarons and your Mays and Clementes, you're going to lose a lot of money. And this is why I just saw that it was losing money, and the trend was basically 5 or 6 orders in a row. So I really gave it up. But if you look at 21 values, you can see the value of 16 is now closer to $4,000. So again, quadruple. And then yeah, I mean, I did make money in today's market in 17. So I guess you could say, in today's market, it'd be worth to keep doing this, right? Take SGC cards and cross them over. However, the caveat today is, does PSA grade harder? And if the answer is yes, then this would be more extreme, maybe negative. So, in total, in today's value, I would have gained almost $4,500, or almost $60 a card that I submitted. So that's really good value today. But I do think it's a little smoke and mirrors, in the fact that again, I got a little lucky in 16 with a few big cards like the Clemente going from an 8 to a 9. Now, will I do this again? Yes, I'm going to do it again. I am going to do a 2021 version of this whenever I can grade again. I have my Collectors Club membership back. I've got some cards, some SGC cards, quite a few, that I've collected in the last 4 years, or 3 to 4 years, and I'll do it again. I'll do a 10-card order, see what the results are, and just show you guys what it's like. But this was a real experiment over 2 years, 76 SGC cards to PSA, and in general I lost almost 3/4 of a grade per card. I made money, but it was trending negative pretty fast, and yeah, and so there you go. I think my experience with this whole thing was PSA grades cards better. SGC misses some pretty big things. They missed a crease. Their insert damaged a pretty big card. That wasn't the only card that was damaged. I got a few others I found that were damaged. And they missed a few trim cards. So at the end of the day, I just think PSA, it was more consistent at this point in time. I think they're probably going to be more consistent going forward. And if SGC is improved, I'll see that in my next experiment. And hope you guys liked it and followed along and got some value out of it. This informs my opinion on SGC. I feel like I have a lot of data to prove what I say. My experience with SGC and how they grade, the things they miss, the issues of their holder, and the value. And it's based on data, and this is the data. So hopefully you guys like the video, and I'll do it again with my 2021 experiment, and I'll give you guys the results. See you next time. Bye, guys.